Air Force veteran Laura Renner started Freedom Makers, where she helps military spouses become virtual assistants. Coming up next on episode 139 of Veteran on the Move.
Welcome to Veteran on the Move. If you're a veteran in transition, an entrepreneur wannabe, or someone still stuck in that JOB trying to escape, this podcast is dedicated to your success. And now, your host, Joe Crane.
Have you checked out the Veteran on the Move YouTube channel? In addition to listening to any podcast episode, you can join our live stream. I'm starting a new project soon, and you can watch us live on YouTube as I walk a soon-to-be veteran through his transition out of the military over the next year. Join us live as we take this veteran through the transition process and into the civilian sector. Also, these live streams will be archived on the Veteran on the Move YouTube channel to watch if you can't make it for the live airing. Make sure you subscribe to the Veteran on the Move YouTube channel, and you will be notified when we go live with our new project on transition. The top 7 paths to freedom is my free gift to you for listening to the show, featuring 7 great ways for a veteran to take their first step into the exciting world of entrepreneurship. To receive your free gift, go to veteranonthemove.com. Or if you're listening on a mobile device, you can text the word veteran to 38470. Laura Renner started Freedom Makers after she saw a need in the military spouse community for portable work-from-home jobs. She also realized that veterans and military spouses are a special group of people, and she has used the strength of the military community to leverage her company, Freedom Makers, to gain credibility in the rapidly growing virtual assistant business. All right, Laura Renner is here with us today, but before, like we do always, before we get to talking about business and entrepreneurship, Laura, if you could take us back a little bit and tell us about what you did in the Air Force.
Sure. I graduated from the Air Force Academy in 2001 and did public affairs before going to grad school to become what was then called FAO, Foreign Area Officer, is now called RAS, Regional Affairs Specialist.
I didn't know they changed the name to that. I had several friends that went and did that. So
okay.
So after it's now called RAS.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So and then take us through a little bit of your transition. What was your decision making, or was the decision made for you as far as getting out of the Air Force? And did you end up taking a job, or did you jump right into this entrepreneurship thing?
Sure. Well, at that time, the Air Force was downsizing, and they were asking for volunteers to leave early. And I knew I wanted to go into business, and I had thought that my next assignment, I would enroll in business school wherever I was stationed. And then just by coincidence or whatnot, my orders never came through. And while I was waiting, I was getting kind of frustrated with not being able to plan my life. And so I opted to volunteer to get out. And I went straight to business school from the Air Force while on terminal.
Okay. And so did you make it all the way through business school, and then, or were you already starting to play around with the idea of your business?
Both. I did make it through business school. I started a business while in business school, and that business did not last. But I was doing both, and I was focusing on entrepreneurship at my school.
And so as you came out of business school, ultimately, how did you find your way into doing what you're doing now?
So I was trying to run my business that I started at school, and right around the time when I ran out of cash, my former commander called me up, and he was now working for a civilian company as well, and wanted me to come work for him again. And it seemed really interesting, and I enjoyed working with him. So I took that opportunity and kind of rebuilt my savings and paid down my credit card debt that I had used to fund my first business, and then left again and started another business.
Okay. And was that business the one you're doing now?
It was the first iteration of it, yes.
Okay. So do you want to tell us a little bit about Freedom Makers then?
Sure. Freedom Makers, we create freedom for business owners by providing remote admin assistance. And our assistants gain freedom as well because most of them are military spouses. And so they're able to keep working no matter when or where their family's PCS.
Okay. So virtual assistants these days is a really hot item, and of course you can find them in lots of different parts of the country. I actually have one virtual assistant that helps me with the editing in my podcast. I used to do it all on my own, and I'm just trying to divest myself of repetitive tasks.
Right.
So she's really the only one that I have right now, and does a great job. Definitely relieves me of a big burden, and it does save me a lot of time. It's almost like the first couple times I used a virtual assistant. It's like a very empowering experience, because when you become this entrepreneur, you quickly fall victim to this mentality that you're the one that has to do everything because you're trying to save money.
Right.
And you just get bogged down in these administrative, repetitive tasks, and next thing you know, you've forgotten to figure out what you're supposed to be doing tomorrow.
Right. So or easy. Getting more clients. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever your business may be, it might be getting more interviews for a podcast, or working on a book, or whatever project you may, and that stuff requires, high level thinking, and you get bogged down into these, not necessarily call them lower level tasks, but it's stuff you already know how to do. And it just takes up your time. And then sometimes when you have to sit down and try to explain to somebody else how to go through this particular task, that's when you realize, holy cow, this is actually a lot more sophisticated than I think it is. It just seems easy to me because I've done it so much. When you try to explain it to somebody, it's like, wow, this is really convoluted.
Right. Exactly. And what we've learned to help our clients be successful with using their virtual assistant is that it's better if they have a system, or I like to call it set it and forget it tasks. Because the problem is like you said, it's all in our heads, and we have a hard time removing ourselves from it.
Oh, yeah.
And if we can't remove ourselves from it, then we can't let someone else do it. And so we focus now on helping them to make sure it's truly a set it and forget it task, so that the freedom maker can help them be successful, and the freedom maker can be successful.
Yeah. And one thing I discovered with virtual assistants early on is I can't hire a virtual assistant and say, okay, how would you make my podcast better? Right. They're going to look at you like, what? It's when you say set it and forget it, it means there has to be a clearly defined process all the way through from beginning to end, and really should not involve much thinking or decision making, the least amount of thinking or decision making that goes into it, because one person might think differently than another, or if there's a decision tree.
Right, exactly. There's clear parameters on what decision to make.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So did you come up with this idea for Freedom Makers because of your own experiences with being an entrepreneur, or was it some other reason?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, it was my first. I had a previous iteration of this. I did the classic pivot, if you will, and my first iteration was doing recruiting for small businesses. And I would come across a lot of business owners who would say, I'm not ready for, or I never want an employee, but they still needed help. And so I thought, well, let me offer virtual assistants as an additional service to my recruiting business. Uh-huh. And right around that time, my brother and my sister-in-law were PCSing. And I was having those conversations with my sister-in-law about what she was going to do for work. And it just reminded me, my mom went through that. I'm an Army brat. My mom went through that. And when I was seeing my friends and my friends' spouses go through that, it just reminded me of that difficulty of finding work every time you move. And so I thought, well, here's an untapped resource. Let me use them to be the assistants. And one of the things that I think we as veterans forget or don't appreciate is we're considered unique. I think to us, we're just like all of our brothers and sisters, but to the civilians, we're seen as very unique. I was speaking to someone a few weeks ago who's like, you're the first veteran I know. And I was like, what?
Isn't that amazing?
Right. It makes sense in the sense that we're less than 1% of the population, but at the same time, it's mind-boggling to people like us because we don't see ourselves as unique. At least that's my perception, talking with my friends or whatnot. We don't see ourselves as unique. And so I had no intention of telling anyone that the assistants were going to be military spouses. I just thought, here's an untapped resource that I can use, and it's good for them too, because they can keep working no matter when or where they PCS. And luckily, the first friend I shared this idea with was like, that's your whole marketing angle. And I was like, what? Oh.
Isn't
And
that
so then
funny?
that became, yeah. So luckily she was the one who pointed that out to me. Otherwise, I would have hidden something that's so special about my company.
Yeah, I had a similar experience when I was starting this podcast. I wanted to be more of a broad-ranged market, and I basically wanted to help anybody that wanted to get into entrepreneurship, go into entrepreneurship. And one of the first
Mm-hmm.
people I interviewed was like, you need to focus on helping veterans become entrepreneurs. And I'm like,
Mm.
well, I was just kind of like, okay, why though? And it just,
Right.
I didn't see it right in the beginning.
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
and I had a couple of people tell me, no, you need to niche down. And since I did, I'm so glad that I did, because I focus on a very tight group of special individuals. And it's folks like you, veterans, that have become entrepreneurs. And I did want to say, I love this story where someone talks about, well, I was going along doing this, doing that, and I noticed there was a gap here, there was a need here, and then knew some personal people that were affected by that need, and so I decided to come up with something to solve the problem. I mean, that's the true essence of entrepreneurship, right?
Right. Right.
So can you take us like through the beginning process and where you're at now with your company? Like who was your first spouse virtual assistant, and who was the first customer, and how you took it from there, and where you're at right now?
Sure. Let's see if I can remember. Because part of the problem I faced was I didn't want to have, 200 spouses and one client, and so it was like, when
Yeah.
do I start recruiting
What comes
and
first, the
when do
chicken or
I?
the egg, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah, that's why
I
I
can't
asked. I want to
remember.
hear how
Yeah.
you got it going. It's like the who was the guy that bought the first fax machine?
Right.
How does that actually get started? How does it work?
Right. I never thought about that. That's a good point.
I heard that a long
Right.
time ago, and I love that. Who's the
Yeah.
guy that bought the first fax machine?
Right.
Who's the
Um,
last guy that still has a fax machine now?
right. I know. People are like, Can you fax it to me? I'm like, no. We're in the 21st century. No, I'm not
Actually,
gonna.
I think USAA. I'm not. I love USAA, but I think
Uh,
sometimes with certain things, USAA makes you fax them stuff, because if it comes in
yeah.
electronically, it can be swiped.
Right. I mean, like some of my insurance, when I have to send stuff to my broker or whatnot, I have to fax it as well. And I
Yeah.
throw a big fit about it the whole time.
Oh, I do too. So I guess I'm like, so can I scan it and email it? Nope. It's got to
Right.
be
Right.
fax. I'm like, so it's spilling out on on the floor in front of the fax machine.
Right.
That's more secure than
Right.
coming. Yep.
Right.
Okay. Whatever. Must be insurance companies then.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've heard, there's a program called, or a nonprofit called Academy Women.
No,
And
I'm writing that one down too, because I'm developing like a list of resources for these kinds of programs. Academy Women.
yes, and I'm guessing by the name it was originally started for women Academy graduates, but when I joined, it was open to all female officers, and then I think they opened it up to enlisted, and then they opened it up to spouses. And part of their program includes an e-mentorship program,
Oh, okay.
and you can sign up as a veteran or as a spouse. They have two different programs. And so I signed up to be a mentor on the military spouse program, and I'm a mentee on the veteran program, or protege, whatever you want to call it.
Uh-huh.
And so I posted in a forum on the military spouse e-mentor program what I was trying to do. And I got my first few spouses through that. I can't remember if I got them before or after I got my first client, or if it was like simultaneous. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And my first client, I have no idea if he knows he was my first client.
That's hilarious. Yeah, you typically don't want to tell the customer that, right?
Right. And there's an organization that meets every week to share leads and referrals with each other. And so it's called B&I, and you're not supposed to have any of your competitors in that group. So basically the rest of the group becomes your sales force. And so you meet once a week and you talk about what kind of referrals you're looking for, and you listen to what kind of referrals everyone else is looking for. And then throughout the week, as you meet people, you connect them or whatnot.
Yeah, a business networking international. I've heard of that.
Yes.
You actually have to
Yes.
pay to be a member of the network,
You
right?
do.
And come to the
You
meetings
do.
and stuff.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Great
Yep.
networking opportunity for anybody that's out there listening. If you want to
Right.
crack the code on networking, just start with BNI. Just as
Yep.
maybe one of your initial
At
ones.
least check it out.
Yeah.
Right. And they're all over the world. So definitely check it out. And figure out if it's a right investment for you, like if you get your money back or whatnot. But they have they're very structured. That's the appeal of something like BNI is they're very structured. So they have a lot of rules about what happens in the meetings and everything gets tracked. Like how many referrals you give, how many people thank you for the business that they got because of your referrals, things like that. And so everything's tracked. And they wanted someone to basically track everything and run everything from the admin side because it's volunteers who do it, like the members who do it. So they were willing to pay to have someone else do it. And so he was our first client. His chapter was our first client. And I got the first Freedom Maker came from that eMentor posting. And ever since then, it's grown where they bring in their friends. Or if, a lot of the bases have Facebook pages and someone will move and say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Does anyone know about any opportunities? And a Freedom Maker might post there and say, hey, check out Freedom Makers.
Oh, that's
cool. And so we're up to almost 50 spouses now, or spouses or dependents, I should say, because there are some brats on there, but mostly spouses and some veterans as well. We have on the team as well. But yeah, we're up to almost 50 now.
That's cool. And you're not really, it doesn't sound like are you actively promoting or advertising or recruiting for more spouses, or are you kind of letting it percolate on its own through word of mouth?
It depends I guess to explain that, I should explain why I'm named Freedom Makers or why I picked that name. One of the reasons is because when I came up with this idea, I'm someone who has a new business idea like every week kind of thing.
Yeah, welcome to the club.
Right. So when I came up with this idea, I was like, all right, how do I know this one is more than just the idea of the week? How do I know that 6 months from now, I'm not going to be bored with this and want to start another business or whatnot? And so I really sat down and thought about it. And I finally figured out that it was that idea of freedom. It was freedom for me in the sense that it would become recurring revenue because the recruiting business I had before was fee-based. And so to your point, if I was, focusing on the recruiting for my current clients, I wasn't out getting new clients.
Right.
And so I get busy. It was like a mountain and valley thing. I get super busy and then nothing, and then super busy and then nothing. And so I like the idea of recurring revenue. And at the same time, I set it up for freedom for our business owners in that there's no minimum hours or monthly contracts, which is what a lot of virtual assistant companies require.
Oh.
So people have used us for one-time projects, or they use us as needed for like overflow or ongoing, or any combination of the above. And then for the spouses, they get to work from home. They get to choose their own hours. They can keep working even when they PCS or whatnot. But also, I set it up so that they can choose which opportunities they want to be considered for. And so, like, if someone says, they're an English major on their resume, I'm not just going to arbitrarily assign all blog writing projects to them because maybe they don't want it.
Right.
So what I do is I say, here's the opportunity. If you're qualified, available, and interested, let me know. And then the ones who respond are the ones who get scheduled a call with the potential client to work with them. So the reason why I say that is because there are times where I won't get enough people expressing interest, even though we have almost 50 people. Some projects or opportunities, there's not that much interest in. And so when that starts to happen regularly, then I say, hey guys, can you bring in some of your friends or go post on a couple of Freedom Makers, be like, hey, can you go post on your Facebook page again that we're looking? When I first got started, what I would do is post on Craigslist near a base and to try and get more. That never really worked out very well, but I tried it. And so when situations get where I'm not getting a lot of interest in projects, then I go out and recruit more. But I haven't had to do that in a while because it's been growing organically. People are bringing in their friends and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's probably the best thing, because the word of mouth advertising, and there's almost a built-in vetting process going on. Whereas if you throw stuff out there on the internet, you may not be sure what you're getting.
Sure.
Do you find your clients are they basically just looking for virtual assistants, or is there, how much of an appeal is it to your clients to know that they're using military spouses?
Surprisingly, especially because I live in the Bay Area, surprisingly that I've had people choose us specifically because they wanted to support military families.
That's great.
And even when I was doing research, because I spoke with a few business owners before choosing to launch this, and one person even said, even if I don't support the war, I still want to support the families, and that's appealing to me. And so we've had people choose us for that, and they also choose us for the flexibility of the no minimum hours or monthly contracts. And if they want to have an American, if they don't want to go to like India or Philippines,
right,
then they choose us too.
Yeah, sometimes the language barrier can be a big issue with VAs with certain things, especially if they're doing anything that has to do with writing, with the various, even if they speak very good English, if they didn't grow up in the U.S., there's little intricacies and nuances of the language and stuff like that.
And even Western management practices, if we're used to working with people differently, and it's not better or wrong or anything like that. It's just different. And if you're not used to working with international people, then that can also play a role in how you work with an international VA.
Yeah, true. Now, speaking of that, the allure of going overseas is you can usually get it pretty cheap, whether it's the economic conditions or the exchange rate, whatever it may be.
Right.
Have you had issues with competing on price at all?
Yeah, there have been people who have chosen to go overseas because it's cheaper, and to me, it's not. There's so much more opportunity out there that I don't see it as a problem. If they want to do that's up to them. And yeah, they're going to save a lot of money, but then they're going to waste a lot of time too. But they don't see it that way. And I'm like, that's fine. Go use them. To me, like, I don't know. It's weird. Like when people are like, who are your competitors? I'm like, yeah, there are a lot of people in the VA industry. However, I don't feel like but the market is so big that I don't feel like it's really affected me so far.
Do you actually, can you actually put a number on the size of the market? Have you done that research, or is there a dollar figure associated with it, or what?
I did when I first started, but I don't remember now. I have no idea.
It seems to me it's probably still growing.
Yeah. Because even out here in the Bay Area, I'll get people who are like, what is a VA?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, so I think the market is really big right now.
Interesting. Can you go over, if somebody, whether they be a client or a potential military spouse that's listening, or a veteran or a military brat, can you go over both sides? Like, if I'm a client, what can you tell me about your business, and then cover the other side of it if I'm a spouse or somebody looking to become a freedom maker? How does it work?
Sure. So for a client, we usually start by outlining what they want us to do. And I try to make sure that they have everything in place for it to be a set it and forget it opportunity or a project. For instance, we spoke with someone last week who wants a freedom maker to call all of her appointments the day before to confirm their appointments. And so I said, okay, in order to do that, they need access to your calendar. You can use something like LastPass to protect your password. You might want to use a Google Voice number, so that way if the appointment calls back, you still have access to it. It's not on the freedom maker's personal cell phone. And then also you want to have rules set in place for if the person calls back or answers and says they need a reschedule, what are the rules for the Freedom Maker to reschedule for you?
Mm-hmm.
So, she had to get those 3 things in place in order for this to work for her. Right. And so that's what I do is make sure they truly have a set it and forget it system in place.
Uh-huh.
And then I go out and post the opportunity I call it the community, and whoever's interested, I schedule the calls. And so I schedule up to 4 calls with potential Freedom Makers, and the Freedom Makers call the client and they'll speak with them and then choose the one they want to work with. And once they choose the one they want to work with, we have what's called orientation, and that's a live screen share that we record. And so in this case, she would show them, okay, here's how you get into my calendar. I want you to, you call these people, and the ones who reschedule, here where the rules are, and here's where you save it or do this or do that, XYZ, right? And we record it so that way the Freedom Maker can reference the video again rather than asking the entrepreneur.
Okay.
Or if for some reason we need to switch out Freedom Makers, the new one has the video to watch.
Okay. So you're definitely, it's very hands-on with new clients come on board. You've got a pretty significant onboarding process before you turn them loose with their VA. It's not like somebody could just come and, well, this person looks good, and they click on them, and then all of a sudden they're working together.
Right.
Okay. And you're doing like a warm or almost a hot handoff to the virtual assistant to make sure everything goes well. Do you find that vetting process and that onboarding process and that warm handoff alleviates a lot of the problems up front?
Well, I think so. To be honest, I just started with, in the past, it would be more like, what do you want us to do? Okay, got it. You know what I mean? And so then they would say, I want you guys to do X, Y, and Z. And I'd be like, okay, got it. And then I'd go, find the Freedom Makers or whatnot.
Okay.
And then once they choose the Freedom Maker, they'd say, okay, I'm going to have you start with A. And I'm like, wait, where did A come from? I thought you wanted us to do X, Y, and Z. And they're like, yeah, once they're up and running, then I'll teach them X and then Y and then Z. But the problem is, as you know, entrepreneurs are so busy that they have a hard time stopping to pass it off to someone else. And so they would start with A and never get to X, Y, and Z. And then maybe even get frustrated that they were still busy, even though they had this VA. And then the VA is frustrated because they're not getting a lot of hours or whatnot.
Yeah.
So recently I started doing that to making sure they truly had a set it and forget it task in mind and up and running so that they have more success. And also I just hired an account manager who's going to check in with them and say, how's it going? Do you have another system that you want help with setting up? And so hopefully that will lead to more client success.
Yes. You're almost educating the client on how to use a VA,
Right.
And I imagine that because I experienced the same problem. I was one of those people that was like, I hired a VA and I'm like, okay, I'm working on this. What do you think? Like that's not what a VA is good for. You got to have very specific tasks in mind in that whole set it and forget it concept, which is why like in this whole entrepreneurship world, there's a lot of people talk about, as an entrepreneur, you need to come up with systems and, whether it be turnover binders or screenshots and video, how you do every little tiny task throughout the day. And so many of us are like, I'm too busy to write all that stuff down. The next thing you know, you're a couple years down the road and your business is all in your head. And you can't turn it over to anybody. Right. So this is a perfect example. One of the main reasons why you should be doing that kind of stuff as you're starting your business is cataloging it and mapping it out and going back and redefining and clearing up your procedures and policies as you go along, for the sole reason that you might be able to turn it over to somebody else down the road. Right. Yeah. All right. And then like from the spouse perspective, what can a spouse expect as far as like hours or hourly rate, or is there an expectation as far as income level and that kind of thing? Sure. So right now, the way it works is when anyone can add themselves to our community, and I try to talk with everyone before
they go on their first call with a potential client. Actually, not try. I do. I won't let anyone have a call with a client until we talk first.
Right.
And so right now, like I said, we have almost 50. We probably have about 15 that are actually actively working. And those 15, I'd say right now, probably average about 10 hours a month. And so I'd like to grow it to the point where any spouse can work as many or as few hours as they want. But right now it's averaging about 10 hours a month. And it may be a while before someone gets their first opportunity. And so I just tell them, be patient, keep asking to be considered, and eventually you'll get your first one. And once they get their first one is when I go into contract with them and bring them into as a freedom maker.
Okay. For 10 hours a month, do you find that a lot of the spouses are like, it's probably about as much as I can do, or a lot of them just chomping at the bit for more hours? It
depends. It's like some, if they're homeschooling their kids or whatnot, then they want, 10 hours is good. I think when they first PCS and they're looking for work, they're chomping at the bit. But then when they find a job, they're like, oh, okay, I'll just keep at 10 hours a month kind of thing. And so it really depends. Although there was one, she PCS this summer from Baltimore to San Diego, and she was like, she was excited, and I was excited because she didn't want to, she wasn't going to look for work when she got to San Diego. She was going to do Freedom Makers. I don't know about full time, but it was going to be her sole thing when she got to San Diego. And now she's actually in school as well. So she's doing Freedom Makers and getting her master's.
Okay. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, Laura, we're getting towards the end of our time. I do want to give you a chance for a shout out for Freedom Makers. If somebody's interested in your business for either way, either to be a client or become a Freedom Maker themselves, how do we find you?
My website is www.freedom-makers.com.
Okay.
And my email is
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My email is Laura, Laura, @freedom-makers.com.
Okay, great. And one last thing, Laura, now that you're there on the fast track entrepreneurial road, looking back on it, if you speaking to the listeners out there that are looking to get into entrepreneurship, you think of anything, what kind of advice would you have for somebody that's out there looking to get started in whatever their idea may be?
I'd say the biggest thing is action is better than perfection. I think especially coming from the military that's so bureaucratic, sometimes we feel like we have to have everything in place before we can get started. And it's like, at least, and do what works with your personality. Like me, I just tend to jump in, and I have a friend who's, she's interviewing a bunch of people before she starts her business, you know what I mean? And so to make sure she's ready. So, whatever works with your personality, but I know that happens a lot. Like that's what I did with my first business. I had the business cards, I had the flyers, I had the website, everything was all set in place before I even got started. And when I started the second business, I didn't even have a business card. I just went to networking events just to see what was going on. I didn't even have a business banking account until I got my first check. And then I went to the bank and was like, I'd like to open a business account.
That's awesome.
And so, I mean, you definitely want to do the legal requirements like forming your LLC or sole prop or whatnot. But then everything else, just figure it out as it comes along. Like, don't wait. Don't do all this preparation in anticipation, right? Take action and then deal with it when you need to.
So true. So true. I've experienced a lot of the same things myself, so I've seen both sides of it. All right. Well, thanks, Laura. Awesome advice. Thanks for sharing your entrepreneurial story, and we look forward to your future success with Freedom Makers.
Thank you so much, Joe, and congrats on your podcast, too.
All right. Thank you. All right. We're Oscar Mike. As you can tell from listening to the Veteran on the Move podcast, interviews are a great way to tell your story and spread the word about your business. If you would like to get booked as a podcast guest, I recommend Interview Valet. You can check out Interview Valet at veteranonthemove.com/valet. Be sure to check out Thrive15.com, the world's premier online education platform that helps entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, and intrapreneurs Learn how to start or grow a successful business. Start your free 30-day membership by going to thrive15.com and use the promo code VETERAN. Thank you for listening to Veteran on the Move, your pathfinder to freedom. If you like the show, leave us a review in iTunes. Reviews are always greatly appreciated. So until next time, this veteran is Oscar